My name's Daniel. I'm 39, and I live in Scranton, Pennsylvania. You'd think by now I'd be used to being the outsider in my own family, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened last Christmas. See, growing up, it was always clear I wasn't exactly favored. I wasn't the star athlete like my brother Kyle, or the golden girl like my sister Melanie. I was just the dependable one. The "can you help us move this weekend" guy. The "can you loan me a little until payday" guy. The one who showed up, quietly, every time they needed someone to mop up a mess. At first, I didn't mind. That's what family's for, right? You pitch in. You cover for each other. But somewhere along the line, it stopped feeling like teamwork and started feeling like servitude. Like I wasn't a brother or a son. I was a resource. And it wasn't until that dinner, sitting at the end of the table, that I realized just how deep that rot had gone. The first sign something was off came when I checked my credit card alerts the morning after Christmas Eve. While everyone was nursing hangovers or pie comas, I was scanning a notification that nearly made me drop my phone. A charge. $9,283. Spent at a local luxury grocery store, a caterer, and a boutique wine shop. All posted in the last 48 hours. I knew I hadn't spent it. I hadn't even been to those places. At first, I assumed fraud. I called my dad to ask if anyone had heard of the charges. That's when he sighed, real casual, like he was explaining the weather. "We took a vote," he said. "Since you don't have kids, we figured you could cover Christmas dinner this year." And right then, something inside me cracked. I remember just standing there, phone pressed to my ear, feeling the silence settle between us. It wasn't even that I was surprised. I wasn't. Somewhere deep down, I think I always knew they saw me as the spare tire, the backup plan. But hearing it spelled out like that, so casual, so matter-of-fact, it hit different. We took a vote. Like I wasn't even in the room. Like my wallet was a communal pot they could dip into whenever it suited them. I swallowed hard. My hands were trembling, but my voice came out steady. "You're going to like what comes next," I told him, quiet, deliberate. He chuckled. Actually chuckled. "Daniel, don't make a big deal out of this. We're family." That was the last thing he said before I hung up. I sat down on the edge of my bed, phone still in my hand, staring at the floor. I could already feel it, the unraveling, the shift. Something had broken, and it wasn't something I could tape back together with a polite smile and another favor. They'd crossed a line, and this time, I wasn't going to be the one paying the toll. That night, I didn't sleep. Not a wink. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the last few years. Every birthday I covered. Every unexpected bill I loaned them money for and never saw again. Every family gathering where Kyle's kids were lavished with gifts while I got a half-hearted, "Oh, I thought you didn't want anything." I realized something, lying there in the dark. I'd been complicit. I'd let this happen. Somewhere along the way, I decided being useful was the only way to stay part of the family. And now here I was, $40 short of $10,000 in debt on a dinner I didn't even eat, because my family had taken a vote. A vote I wasn't even invited to. I picked up my phone, logged into my credit card account, and stared at that number. $9,283. Pending. Not even posted yet. There was still time. I hit dispute. Canceled the charge. Then, almost without thinking, I went one step further. I froze the card, closed the account, ordered a new one under a different number. And then, I sat there, phone in my hand, waiting. It didn't take long. By noon, the calls started coming. First Kyle. Then Melanie. Then Mom. Dad. All their numbers lighting up my phone like Christmas lights. I let them all go to voicemail. Then the texts. "Daniel, what's going on with the card? The caterer says payment was declined. Daniel, call me. We need to fix this. Daniel, you're ruining everything." Each message made me smile a little more. Not out of spite. Okay, maybe a little, but out of sheer relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing to fix it. I wasn't pulling out my wallet like some dutiful little brother-son savior. I was letting them feel it. And oh, they felt it. By dinner time, there were 34 missed calls. Melanie left voicemails crying. Mom's text shifted from polite to pleading. Dad's tone went from disappointed to angry to downright desperate. Even Kyle, the untouchable golden boy, left me a shaky message saying, "Come on, man, the kids were counting on this." But I didn't respond. I sat there in my apartment, alone, eating leftover Chinese food off a paper plate, feeling freer than I had in years. They'd made their choice. Now they could live with it. By the next morning, the silence had turned into a storm. I woke up to another wave of notifications, missed calls, voicemails, frantic texts. But it wasn't just family anymore. Now it was friends of the family, neighbors, even Kyle's wife, texting me with that fake sweetness she'd always reserved for when she wanted something. "Hey Daniel, I don't know what's going on, but the kids are really upset. Can't you just help out for their sake?" I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the reply button. For their sake. I almost laughed. Funny how the kids only mattered when it meant leverage and guilt. Not when they were cutting me out of decisions. Not when they voted without me. I didn't reply. Instead, I grabbed my coat and went for a walk. Scranton was cold that morning, a thin sheet of frost coating the sidewalks. The streets were mostly quiet, save for the hum of cars heading to work, the occasional bark of a dog. I walked past the old church where we used to go every Easter, past the diner Dad liked to take Kyle to after Little League games, past the park where I sat alone more times than I could count. Every step felt like peeling off a layer I'd been wearing for too long. It wasn't until I hit the edge of town, overlooking the hills dusted with snow, that I realized this wasn't just about the money. It never had been. It was about always being the second choice. The backup plan. The one they assumed would never say no. Well, I had said no. And now they didn't know what to do with me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Mom. Another voicemail. I almost didn't listen, but something in me pressed play. "Daniel, honey, please. Your father's very upset. He said some things he didn't mean last night. We didn't think this would be such a big deal. We just thought you'd help. Like always. Please call me." I stood there in the cold, the words swirling around me like smoke. I could almost picture her, sitting at the kitchen table, rubbing her temples, not quite understanding why her good son wasn't falling in line. I could have called her back. I could have explained, again, why I couldn't do it anymore. But what would have changed? They didn't want an explanation. They wanted the same old Daniel. The one who gave. The one who fixed. The one who covered. And I wasn't him anymore. I turned off my phone, slipped it into my pocket, and walked back into town. Every step felt lighter. I wasn't going back. It had been 3 days. 3 days of silence, of calls I didn't return, of messages left unread. By then, I thought maybe they'd given up. Maybe they'd finally accepted that the well had run dry. I was wrong. The knock came late in the evening. Not a timid knock. A knock that rattled the door in its frame. I froze in the middle of my tiny apartment's kitchen, microwave humming behind me, leftovers spinning. Part of me didn't want to answer, but curiosity won. I opened the door. It was Kyle. He stood there in a coat too thin for the cold, face flushed from the wind, or maybe from whatever conversation had brought him here. His jaw was tight, his hands shoved into his pockets. Behind him, parked haphazardly by the curb, was his minivan, hazard lights blinking. "Can we talk?" he asked, not meeting my eyes. I leaned against the doorframe. "You're talking." He shifted his weight, let out a frustrated sigh. "Look, man, this whole thing, it's gotten blown out of proportion. You're making Mom sick over this. Dad's furious. You know they're not good with money. They weren't trying to screw you over." I raised an eyebrow. "Kyle, they charged nearly $10,000 to my card without asking. And then told me I was covering it because I don't have kids. You really think that's not screwing me over?" He winced. "Okay, yeah, it sounds bad. But you know how things are. They always counted on you. You've always been the responsible one. They just assumed you'd handle it." "That's the problem," I said, my voice quiet. "They assumed." We stood there in the cold silence, his breath visible in little clouds. Finally, he looked up. "We can't pay it. They maxed out their credit trying to make Christmas nice for everyone. If you don't cover it, the caterer's threatening to sue. And Mom's been crying nonstop. Please, man, just fix it." I stared at him. He wasn't here for me. He wasn't here to understand. He was here to reset the status quo, to put Humpty Dumpty back together, even if it meant gluing me back into the same old role. I stepped back inside. "Good night, Kyle." He took a step forward. "Daniel." I shut the door, locked it. Leaning my forehead against the cool wood, I waited. He knocked again, softer this time. Then the sound of retreating footsteps. I waited 5 minutes before opening the peephole. He was gone. Only then did I let out the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The next morning, something strange happened. No calls. No texts. No voicemails. I'd gotten so used to the constant buzzing of my phone, the desperate messages, the guilt-soaked pleas, that the absence felt louder than the noise. At first, I thought maybe they'd given up again. Maybe Kyle had told them I wouldn't budge. Maybe they'd finally hit the wall. But when I stepped outside to grab the newspaper from the stoop, I saw the envelope. No stamp. No address. Just my name, scribbled in my mom's familiar looping handwriting. I stood there for a moment, the cold seeping through my socks, staring at it like it might explode. Finally, I opened it. Inside were 3 letters. One from Mom. One from Dad. One from Melanie. Mom's was first. Short. A shaky apology wrapped in excuses. We didn't think it would hurt you so much. We only wanted the family to have a special Christmas. You know we love you. Dad's was longer. Defensive. I've worked hard my whole life. I shouldn't have to explain myself to my son. You don't understand the pressure of being a provider. You've never had a family to support. You're just angry because you're alone. That one stung more than I expected. Melanie's, well, hers wasn't really an apology at all. You're blowing this way out of proportion. You've always been dramatic. Just pay it and move on. Don't punish the rest of us because you're bitter. I sat down on the step, letters in my lap, the cold biting at my skin. And for the first time in this whole mess, I didn't feel angry. I felt done. It wasn't just the money. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the clarity. This was who they were. This was how they saw me. And nothing I did, no holiday dinner I paid for, no favor I performed, no problem I solved, was ever going to change that. The letter Mom wrote was the hardest. Because I knew she meant it. I knew she really believed she loved me. She just didn't understand that loving someone doesn't mean using them. I folded the letters back into the envelope, walked inside, tucked them into the drawer where I kept old birthday cards and tax documents and that one last photograph of us all together, back when I still believed we were something resembling whole. And then, I poured myself a cup of coffee, and sat at the window, and watched the snow fall. Then my phone rang. Not a text, not a voicemail, a call. From Dad. I stared at it, watching his name flash on the screen. For a long moment, I just listened to the ring-own echo through the quiet apartment. And then, without really knowing why, I answered. His voice was low, controlled, but sharp around the edges. Daniel. Dad. A pause. Then, we need to talk. I don't think we do, I said, calm. He exhaled hard, the sound hissing through the line. You've made your point. You embarrassed your mother. You made this whole thing harder than it needed to be. Now fix it. I almost laughed. The arrogance, the entitlement, it wasn't even subtle anymore. Fix it. I repeated. Like I've been fixing everything for years? Like I fixed the broken heater last winter? The car you didn't want to pay to tow? The bills? The groceries? The mortgage? What exactly am I fixing this time, Dad? Another silence. Then, coldly, your mother's health isn't good. You're stressing her out. If something happens to her because of this, it's on you. Ah, there it was. The final card. Guilt. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the weight of it settle over me like an old coat I didn't wear anymore. Dad, I said quietly, if Mom's health is that fragile, maybe you shouldn't be putting this on her. You ungrateful. I hung up. Just like that. I set the phone down on the table, sat back in the chair, looked out the window again, where the snow was now covering the footprints I'd left earlier that morning. They tried every trick in the book. Anger, guilt, obligation, love. But the truth was, the old playbook didn't work on me anymore. For the first time in my life, I wasn't their fixer. I wasn't their wallet. I wasn't their fallback plan. I was just me. And that was enough. I spent the morning doing something I hadn't allowed myself in a long time. Nothing. I made a slow breakfast. Took my coffee back to bed. Let sunlight creep across the sheets while I read a book I'd started 3 months ago but never had time to finish. And for the first time in a long time, I felt rested. In the afternoon, I went for a walk again. The snow had melted a little under the weak winter sun, leaving patches of ice on the sidewalks. I walked past the familiar landmarks, the park, the church, the old library. Every step felt like I was reclaiming the town as mine, not a backdrop for obligations. Just mine. I wasn't sure if I'd hear from them again. Part of me hoped I wouldn't. Another part, smaller, quieter, wondered what I'd do if I did. But the truth was, it didn't matter anymore. For the first time in my life, I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their acceptance. I didn't need them. When I got home, I found a voicemail waiting. It was Kyle again. I almost deleted it without listening, but curiosity tugged. His voice was different this time. Tired. Defeated. Dan, I don't know if you're even going to listen to this. I wanted to say I get it. I really do. I didn't before, but I do now. They've been calling me nonstop since you cut them off. And now they're asking me for money. Like it was always supposed to be your job. And since you're out, I'm next in line. And I get it now. I get why you're done. A long pause. Then, I don't know if I can do what you did, but I respect it. Just be well, man. Click. I sat there holding the phone in my hand, listening to the soft hum of the radiator in the corner, the wind against the window pane. For the first time in my life, Kyle had seen it. Seen them. And maybe, for the first time in years, he'd seen me. And I realized, I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. A week passed. Then two. The call stopped. The text stopped. Even the guilt-tripping letters stopped. It was like the tide had gone out, and for the first time, I could see the shoreline clearly. No more waves threatening to drag me under. The quiet wasn't lonely. It was clean. During those days, I started cleaning out my apartment. Not because I had to, but because it felt right. Old papers. Clutter I kept, just in case. A drawer full of things from them. Cards, gifts I never really wanted. Photos I couldn't look at without feeling that familiar sting. One by one, I boxed them up. And then, on a Saturday morning, I carried that box out to the dumpster. Stood there for a moment, fingers resting on the lid, thinking maybe, just maybe, I'd regret it. I didn't. I lifted the lid, dropped it in, watched it disappear beneath the trash bags and broken lamps and yesterday's news. When the lid clanged shut, I felt lighter than I had in years. That afternoon, I took myself out for dinner. Just me. No obligations. No company. I sat by the window of a small Italian place, sipping red wine, watching the snow fall gently over Scranton. A couple sat across from me, laughing over their shared dessert. A group of college kids in the corner sang happy birthday to their friend. The waiter brought me a second glass on the house. And I realized I wasn't missing anything. I wasn't missing them. I wasn't missing the drama, the strings, the endless taking without giving. I'd spent my whole life believing that family meant sacrifice, that love meant endurance, that being the good one meant letting yourself be used. But sitting there, alone but content, I understood something I'd never dared believe before. Family isn't who expects you to sacrifice. It's who doesn't ask you to. And love? Love doesn't drain you. It fills you. I paid the bill, left a generous tip, and walked home under the falling snow. And for the first time in my life, I felt whole. The next morning, I woke up with a strange kind of clarity. Not a rush of triumph. Not defiance. Just a quiet knowing. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and pulled out a blank sheet of paper. No email this time. No text. No voicemail. I decided if they wanted a final word from me, it would be in my handwriting, something they couldn't scroll past or forward to each other in another chain of whispered complaints. I wrote slowly, thoughtfully. Dear Mom, Dad, Kyle, Melanie, I've spent my whole life trying to be what you needed. The helper. The fixer. The one who covered what went wrong. And for a long time, I believed that's what family was for. That being useful was the same as being loved. But now I see that love isn't about what you can get from someone. It's about what you're willing to give back. And over these years, I've given everything I had: time, money, energy, forgiveness. And the truth is, you've taken. Every time. Without hesitation. Without thanks. Without ever once asking if I had enough left to give. You took, and you expected more. I'm writing to tell you, I have nothing left to give. I still love you. But I love myself too. And I've learned that loving myself means not setting myself on fire to keep others warm. I wish you well. I hope you find what you're looking for. But you'll have to find it without me. Love. Daniel. I folded the letter, slid it into an envelope, addressed it, stamped it, walked to the corner mailbox and dropped it in. And as I watched it fall inside, a strange peace washed over me. Not sadness. Not anger. Just peace. I turned and walked home, the cold air sharp and clean against my face. And with each step, I felt more certain. I hadn't lost my family. I'd simply stopped pretending they were something they'd never been. Weeks passed. No reply to the letter. No calls. No texts. At first, it felt strange. Like a missing tooth you can't stop running your tongue over. But then the strangeness faded, and in its place came something steadier. Something I'd never known before. Freedom. I started to notice small things I'd never let myself enjoy before. Saturday mornings without obligations. Evenings without dread creeping in over who might need what from me next. I went to the movies alone, not because I had no one to invite, but because I wanted to. I signed up for a pottery class. I joined a book club. Little by little, I started living my life. One snowy afternoon in February, I was walking through the park when my phone buzzed. It was Kyle, but not a call. A photo. A picture of his kids building a snowman. No caption, just a quiet offering. And somehow, that made me smile. Not because it was an apology. Not because it fixed anything. But because for the first time in our lives, he wasn't asking for anything. He was just sharing. I saved the photo, put the phone back in my pocket, and kept walking. I don't know what will happen next. I don't know if they'll reach out again, or if the silence will stretch on forever. But what I do know is this: I don't owe them my peace. I don't owe them my energy. And I don't have to keep proving my worth to people who never saw it. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not waiting anymore. I'm just living. And that's enough.